I've always wanted to say this. Destiny Starslide!
Do you think Zanny's watching this video? So this is me playing the longsword in Wilds, and do you see this new move? This is the new Spirit Release Slash, and it's every weep's wettest dream. I mean, look at that animation and the delayed anime damage. What's up guys, Chris here, and today I will make the most in-depth longsword breakdown video for you guys after playing it at Gamescom. Let's start with the most important change. For those familiar with longsword and World, you know that the Yai Spirit Slash has always been a very risky move to use since it reduced your gauge level if timed incorrectly. Since Rise, not only did you not lose a gauge level anymore when missing it, but you could actually increase your level by one stage when landing this counter correctly. And this major buff Longsword received carried over to Wilds. See how I'm currently on the yellow gauge? I go into Special Sheath and my Yai Spirit Slash levels me up to red. So then, just like in the past, after the Yai Spirit Slash, we can directly combo into Helm Breaker again, which consumes one gauge level.
Spirit Thrust! Helm Breaker! Starslide!
Helm Breaker seems to deal 7 damage numbers again if everything connects properly. Here I hit 7 times 13 damage on Balahara and 7 times 15 on Chatakabra. Brand new in Wilds is you can now cancel out of your Helm Breaker animation if you know you'll miss it. This way, you also won't consume a gauge level. TwoSix from Eric's Gaming recorded this very nicely in his gameplay. What's new in Wilds is the Spirit Release Slash, which based on my experience so far can only be used after the Helm Breaker. This would imply that you can only ever use it while on yellow gauge. Once you've used the Spirit Release Slash, you lose one more level and land on white gauge. But in this clip here, you can see me with the Spirit Release Slash, and good news is that you don't consume a gauge level if you miss. Much like the Helm Breaker, it is a delayed move mechanic whereby damage numbers appear after the slash has happened. And the damage output is crazy. After an initial tiny damage number of 3, we can see 3 times 25 damage, 3 times 16, 3 times 12, and 3 times 7 damage. Like, are you kidding me? This is crazy. So before that, the Helm Breaker on red gauge dealt 105 damage and brought me to yellow. And then the Spirit Release Slash dealt 180 damage and brought me to white. Actually, 186 damage with this low rank gear on green sharpness and literally 0 offensive skills is very impressive. But Spirit Release Slash also consumes one gauge level, so I always was down to white gauge after using Helm Breaker and then Spirit Release Slash afterwards. Now, you might say 186 damage is fine, cause you have to level up your gauge twice afterwards to get back to red gauge, right? But no. Check out how fast you can get back from white to red with the new Focus Strike attack. While aiming with the focus mode, when you press R1 and make contact with a wound, then there are 3 different focus strike attacks you can use with longsword. Well, based on my observation with the Gamescom version at least. First of all, this V-shaped looking uppercut. This one seemed to be the neutral focus strike attack without holding any directional joystick inputs. Then secondly, you have the sideward slash via holding the joystick sideways. And lastly, even a backwards focus strike I was able to see in Dear Gamer's gameplay. Keep in mind that this is just my personal assumption that joystick directions determine which of the 3 focus strikes actually plays out. But what makes this move specifically so insanely good is that when you hit 2 wounds, you can directly level your gauge from white to red. And I feel like this can be used very often as it was pretty easy to wound monsters and hit 2 wounds at the same time, at least in the Gamescom version. But even if you only hit 1 wound and only level up by 1 gauge, you can still combo into Spirit Slash 3 right after the focus strike is done, allowing you to quickly get from yellow to red.
Helm Breaker, Spirit Release, Focus Strike. It's the new red gauge cycle of life.
But if this wasn't enough, Longsword has an almost completely new set of animations for the red gauge specifically. Your regular overhead slashes you do with triangle have a completely new animation on red gauge, and they are called Crimson Slash 1, 2, and 3. And this lets you hit way faster, resulting in more damage numbers. Also, check out how much the foresight slash has changed. While on red gauge, you will instead use what is called a foresight whirl slash, and it's straight out of anime. After the spirit round slash, you can then use a spinning crimson slash, which also allows you to change direction up to 180 degrees in case the monster is behind you. These combo options are so crazy. Let me talk about the new move Spirit Charge. You can use it by holding down R2, and it looks much like a counter, but I am 90% sure it actually isn't. Instead, what it does is it lets you level up your gauge if you hit it properly. What GamerSP showed really nicely in this clip is that when your combo goes into the wrong direction, you can go into Spirit Charge to change your direction. Then release the charge and level up your gauge. But it looks like you need to time it correctly. Also, maybe the focus armor skill can make this charge faster. We have to see in the full game. So from what it looks like, Spirit Charge can only level up your gauge by 1 level, whereas Focus Strike can technically bring you from no gauge to red if you hit 3 wounds. At least that's how it should work in theory, but we've only seen footage from white to red so far. If you guys have seen footage from no gauge to red, please let me know down below in the comments. Now, new in Wilds, Special Sheath does not allow you to freely change direction anymore as it used to, unless maybe when you combine it with focus mode, but I didn't get to test it during my short play session. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see my longsword videos in the future. But just as we're used to, Special Sheath still gives you the same 2 combo options like in World. The Yai Slash and the Yai Spirit Slash. Yai Slash still gives Spirit Regen, which fills up your Spirit bar automatically. Sadly, there was no quick Sheath armor skill available in the Gamescom version of Wild, so I couldn't test how much it influences Special Sheath and if it's going to be mandatory skill for Longsword or not. Well then finally, let's talk about the standard combo changes. And those of you familiar with Longsword might remember the combo flow of your regular triangle hits. Overhead, thrust, rising slash. Overhead, thrust, rising slash. Now in Wilds, this has also changed and the combo goes like this. Overhead, overhead, crescent. Overhead, overhead, crescent slash. This time around, it seems like the devs wanted to reserve the thrust attack exclusively for pressing circle, and I think this change is very straightforward and makes a lot of sense. The regular Spirit combo also changed.
Surprise!
Spirit Blade 1 and 2 let you move in different directions now. You can even move backwards while using them. If you hold your joysticks forward, look how much Spirit Blade moves you forward now. This can be used to quickly close a gap to a monster. Then, after Spirit Blade 3, the final Spirit Round Slash lets you change the direction quite a lot. Also, new in Wilds, while aiming with the focus mode, it seems like you can change the direction even further. One of the most stylish new longsword moves in Wilds is undoubtedly the Mount Finisher. Monster Hunter Wilds absolutely needs a collaboration with One Piece. A few small things I noticed when watching gameplay was that you can still use slinger ammo while your sword is drawn, showcased by Tokuda-san. The last thing I wanted to mention is that I felt like the Spirit Thrust had a shorter range forward compared to World, or maybe it was just me standing further away from the target without realizing it. At the same time though, many longsword animations felt faster. So then, what is my final opinion about Longsword and Wilds? I would say that on one hand it has become a lot more beginner friendly in a way where missing either Yai Spirit Slash or Spirit Release Slash do not punish the player for whiffing, and Helm Breaker can be cancelled. So way lower risk than before, but just like in Rise, experienced players are still going to get rewarded for correctly timing the Yai Spirit Slash, which levels up their gauge. All of the new mobility, honestly, kinda confused me at first, but I look forward to mastering it when the game comes out. I think it will be fantastic once I'm used to these changes. So ultimately, I would not be surprised if experienced players still find Longsword enjoyable since it's received such a big makeover. But at the same time, I can also see many new players picking up the Longsword in Wilds as their new main weapon. So in the end, Longsword could become even more popular. Boys, prepare to get staggered. Ultimately, Longsword is still a counter-heavy weapon with a high skill ceiling, which rewards you when knowing the monster's movesets inside out, and especially with all the new combo options, your brain will need time to digest all of this. Many of you guys know I'm a Charge Blade main first and foremost. And my brain is honestly still largely wired to basic Longsword from 2010. I used to play Longsword all the time back then, but regardless, I worked really hard on this video here analyzing every little detail of my captured footage with the Longsword in Wilds, and I hope it helped you guys to understand better how this weapon works. Of course, a big thanks to Capcom for the opportunity to record Wilds at Gamescom. Since the 20 minutes of gameplay Capcom allowed us to use are published, this is going to be my last in-depth video about Wilds for a while. Until then, I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.